keep talking about this. The reason I'm saying these things is that these are the exact companies that require tons and tons of ads or discounts or cashbacks to artificially increase their delta to make it appear stronger. Let me give you another example, which is slightly more complicated. Imagine ordering food online on an app like Swiggy or Zomato, or calling the restaurant and ordering food. For a lot of us over here in this room, it will be Delta 4. But you move to a distant cousin or our parents or anybody who is not so tech savvy, it is not Delta 4 for them, because most likely they're using 2 restaurants and calling them, and they already know the guys that they order same food from, and it's not Delta 4 for them. So you will see that they will get the first 1 million customers quickly and then fail to grow after that because they have not been able to make it Delta 4 for the rest of the people, right? Why am I talking about Delta 4? Delta 4 comes from a core principle of biology where every time a species has a breakout and one version of that species becomes, let's say, multiple times more efficient than the previous species, they wipe out the previous species, right? It has happened with, say, lizards in Galapagos Island, where one lizard become much more efficient at consuming resources. The other species were completely wiped out in the same family, right? And this is true for companies, true for services, true for anything, right? But if you don't understand this principle, you will end up spending a lot of money building this. So let's go further. Basically what happens is that if the company is not increasing delta, it will do that, and if the company has lower delta, it will actually destroy wealth. And therefore, almost wealth is moving in the spectrum of efficiency, right? There are companies that are burning wealth, and there are companies that are earning wealth, are on the spectrum of efficiency. Let's move forward. So this is basically what it is, right? If you are a lower delta company, that you will burn a lot of wealth in trying to do that. But, sorry.
Isn't it also because the example which you have given primarily, the first example is more of the necessity for a user versus the second example is we do have multiple options out there, and then a user can choose
Perfect.
offline versus online,
if there is no differentiation in that product, which is large enough, they will always end up competing. Think about a simpler example is humans on a dating app. If the delta was drastic, they would not be as competing as much. But if the difference is hardly anything, which is true for most humans, and therefore we are constantly trying to seek ways, oh, let me achieve this massive degree, or let me figure out a way to get a six-pack, or something or the other we are trying to do to constantly find that massive delta, or get some massive wealth, get some massive signaling, right? Get an award somewhere. We are constantly trying to differentiate, and this is not a necessary product also. You can think of, means the word necessity or other things are just the labels we apply to how frequently we use the product. But it's true for everything, right? If I give an example of this pill that I will do to remove these specs, means this is not I'm going to use that pill once, but I'll still create wealth, right? And it'll spread multiple times. There are a lot of treatments that, let's say skincare treatment, that run once a time, but they have huge bragworthiness. That you do it once. Like there is a beautiful example of this new hair curler of Dyson that you must have heard about. How many of you have heard about that new curler? Okay, good. And it's not spreading through ads. It's Delta 4, and they all want it. It's very expensive, 35,000 rupees. Otherwise, I'm sure everybody would have it probably next week. So let's talk about examples when, even if you have Delta 4 companies, it will not be good enough to create wealth. First is affordability, right? We know airlines are Delta 4 to travel to a place compared to railways, but if you cannot afford it, it's not Delta 4 for you. Readiness. We were just discussing, Sandeep, Free Culture was a company ahead of its time. If Uber was launched before smartphones became popular, would have not been Delta 4 to spread. Learning effort. Just because I design a more efficient language compared to English, it will not replace English. Because all of us have spent time and effort to learn this language. We've learned, let's say, thousands of words, how to read labels. We have put that labels everywhere, and it's become a combined effort for us to be together. And therefore, or Tally for that example, right? If everybody has learned Tally to do accounting, just because we build a better accounting software, it will not replace that, right? Configurations is similar to learning effort. It is very hard for us to change our domestic maids or drivers because the amount of configurations we do on top of them, right? And we don't realize that. We only realize that when we have a replacement maid coming or a replacement driver coming. Because we have all of these configurations done on them that makes it harder for us to replace them. Even if you find a Delta 4 version of that. iOS is a classic example, right? Anybody who has tried to move from iOS to Android, your autocorrect stops working completely. Because they have learned how to figure out your typos, and when you move to another operating system, they are like they make you look terrible, so you go back to it very quickly. Collective participation is the same thing. WhatsApp is an example. We have so many groups, so many things. Just because a better messenger comes in, you will not just shift, right? Therefore, like someone like WeChat has not made a big impact over here because it becomes the language and how people communicate with each other, right? Branded lens. This is an interesting one. If a product is designed and becomes Delta 4, it takes the form of a verb, right? We don't say, let's get a taxi, you say, call an Uber. And is able to land grab, it turns into a verb, and verbs are harder to replace, even if you create a Delta 4 company around that. I mean, there are obviously examples on how low Delta companies can fake or you can hack UBP. Few examples are here, right? These companies would fake a Delta 4 by creating an impression that they are better. Although there may not be enough scientific proof to believe that these products are drastically better, but they do a great job in marketing, and this is exactly where all of us come in, right? That we create some kind of a differentiation through the story, imagery, and so on and so forth, right? So what we have seen is that there are things that are being used constantly. One is influencers. Second is piggyback another Delta 4 and fake inefficiencies. I'll talk about influencers for a bit. Earlier, influence was limited to anything that had distribution. Distribution was limited to radio, TV, and there were gatekeepers who decided how to influence, right? So movie stars were designed by these guys, TV stars were designed by these guys. There were no ways for you to come in and become a celebrity until reality shows came in, and so many normal people were got a chance to become celebrities. But now apps like TikTok allow you to become celebrities, and all of them are now media channels, right? And they have their own influence. I'm not saying that they all influence in the same manner. I don't think a tier 3 influencer who's good at dancing can now convince you to buy a car, but they definitely have their own medium to potentially sell an FMCG product to you, right? And therefore, there is an entropy of influence that is happening, right? And it's all about time spent. Wherever the users are spending time is where they're getting influenced from. We humans don't do any behavior which is not copied. All of us believe that we are original people, but we are not. Piggyback another Delta 4. Every time a company has lower Delta, they find other Delta 4 companies to ride on, right? Therefore, you will see, they will say, oh, now we need to do ads on TikTok to become a way to get more customers. And that is because TikTok is a Delta 4 company where you are riding on. Or we'll say we need to hire this cool marketing head in the company because that is the Delta 4 that we are trying to hire, right? And like, for example, a company like Truecaller, which has probably 100 million DAU, does not have a marketing person, right? Cred, which has been around for 4 months and is growing quite well, we do not have a marketing person in the team, right? And Delta 4 companies require less Delta 4 people to make it happen. I think mediocre founders like me can also do well if you can find a Delta 4 company over here, right? What is faking inefficiency, right? This is the most interesting one I've found. This is a classic example is dandruff, right? Nobody cared about dandruff 100 years ago, right? It was just dead skin and everybody had it. But the media constantly showed that, oh, you will not be attractive to somebody if you have dandruff. And it was also told to the women that, okay, you should not like somebody who has dandruff. And this brainwashing has basically resulted in creating fake inefficiency that dandruff is a bad thing. But by the way, this is also true for, one would argue that even taking bath before 300 years ago was not considered to be inefficient. But now you can easily influence somebody in saying that, oh, if you have this, nobody will be attracted to you. And actually that becomes the narrative very, very soon. Toothpaste was not very, or brushing teeth was not normal before 100 years also. So